When Emily Carter, a skilled mechanic known for bringing old machines back to life, uncovers a forgotten tunnel beneath an abandoned bank, she never imagined what she'd find. What began as a routine inspection of the bank's old vault system quickly turns into a discovery of armored trucks and hidden riches that could change her life forever. But secrets run deep, and Emily's curiosity leads her into a dangerous game of power and betrayal. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping journey, let us know where you're tuning in from. And if stories like this ignite your curiosity, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's episode will reveal an even bigger twist. Let's get started. The sun was beginning to set over the small town, casting an orange glow across the cracked pavement of Main Street. Emily Carter's mechanic shop, tucked between two abandoned storefronts, hummed with the usual quiet rhythm. The air inside was thick with the smell of oil and metal, and the sound of her wrench turning echoed off the walls. But today, Emily was working on something different. Today wasn't about fixing engines or welding broken frames. It was about history. Emily's friend, Tom, had called earlier with a job offer she couldn't refuse. He had been hired to survey the old downtown bank building, and after a few rounds of inspections, he was sure something wasn't right. The place had stood empty for years, its walls crumbling and its vaults sealed, but Tom suspected there was something more beneath the surface. He needed someone with an eye for detail, someone who could think like a mechanic. She'd agreed instantly. It was a break from the usual grind, a chance to escape the humdrum of car repairs for something that might just be a little more exciting. The old bank loomed in front of her, its iron gates rusted and its windows grimy from decades of neglect. The building seemed frozen in time, its faded architecture a relic from a bygone era. As Emily stepped through the creaking front door, a wave of nostalgia hit her. The air inside was musty, thick with the smell of old paper and dust. Tom was already there, poring over the blueprints scattered across a table in the corner. He looked up as she walked in, a grin spreading across his face. "You made it," he said. "I was starting to think I'd have to do this alone." Emily nodded, setting down her bag and pulling on a pair of gloves. "What's the plan?" Tom gestured to the blueprints. "We've got to check the vaults, see if any of them are salvageable. But there's something about this place that doesn't sit right with me. Look at these plans, they've got tunnels listed underneath the building. I don't know what they're for, but something tells me we should take a look." Emily felt the familiar thrill of curiosity spark within her. She'd worked on old machines for years, and the thought of discovering something hidden beneath layers of time appealed to her more than she'd like to admit. She studied the plans, tracing the lines of the building and its forgotten features. "Looks like there's a maintenance tunnel that wasn't on the original records," Emily said, pointing to a section of the blueprint that was marked with an X. "It's been sealed off." "That's where I want to start," Tom said. "Let's see if we can find it." They made their way down to the basement, where the vault doors stood ominously silent. The cold stone walls seemed to close in on them, and the flickering light from their flashlights only added to the eerie atmosphere. Emily wasn't easily spooked, but something about this place made her uneasy. "We'll check out the vaults later," Tom said, his voice low. "First, we need to find that tunnel." They began to explore, moving deeper into the basement, stepping carefully over piles of old debris. It was a maze of forgotten rooms and corridors, each one more decayed than the last. But as they reached the farthest corner, Emily's flashlight caught something strange, something that didn't belong. In the corner of the room, half hidden beneath a pile of old wooden crates, was a large metal door, partially concealed by overgrown vines and dust. There was no sign on the door, no markings, just an odd, unremarkable panel that seemed out of place against the crumbling walls. Emily crouched down, brushing away the debris. The metal was cold to the touch, but as she ran her fingers along the edge, she felt a slight indentation, as though there was a mechanism waiting to be triggered. "What do you think this is?" Tom asked, leaning over her shoulder. Emily didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her tool belt and pulled out a small crowbar. With a quick motion, she pried open the rusted edge of the door, revealing a hidden compartment behind it. She took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The tunnel inside was narrow, its walls lined with old bricks and mortar. The air smelled stale, but there was something else, something she couldn't quite place. The faintest echo of metal, like the distant rumble of an engine, seemed to reverberate from deep within the tunnel. "I think we've found it," Emily murmured, her voice barely a whisper. Her heart raced with excitement, and she felt a spark of anticipation in the pit of her stomach. Whatever lay ahead in the darkness, she knew it would be far more than just a forgotten maintenance tunnel. Emily's breath quickened as she stepped cautiously into the dark tunnel, the air cold and musty. The faint scent of mildew and rust lingered, mixing with the earthy smell of stone. Tom followed closely behind, his flashlight flickering against the uneven walls. The beam of light swept over the tunnel's narrow expanse, illuminating only small sections of the path ahead. The tunnel seemed endless. Each step they took echoed in the quiet, amplifying the unease building in Emily's chest. It felt like they were venturing into a forgotten world, cut off from time itself. As she walked, Emily's mind raced. What could this tunnel possibly lead to? Why had it been sealed off for so long? And why had no one mentioned it before? A low hum vibrated through the ground beneath her boots, sending a shiver up her spine. It was subtle, but it was there, a faint, mechanical sound, like something deep in the earth was alive, pulsing, waiting to be discovered. Emily stopped in her tracks, holding up a hand to signal Tom to stop. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Tom paused, his eyes narrowing as he listened. The humming was barely audible now, almost as if it was trying to hide itself. He nodded slowly. "I did, but I don't know what it is. Let's keep moving." Emily hesitated for a moment but then nodded. Whatever it wasn't enough to stop her now. She had to see where this tunnel led. She gripped the flashlight tighter and took another step forward, the sound of her boots on the concrete echoing in the narrow space. As they continued down the tunnel, Emily's curiosity began to overpower her caution. The walls, once just old stone and dirt, now seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, as though the place was trying to communicate something to her. There was something undeniably unsettling about it. Then, as they turned a sharp corner, the tunnel opened up into a vast chamber. The sight before them took Emily's breath away. Rows upon rows of armored trucks stood motionless in the shadows. Their surfaces were dull with age, the once shiny paint now covered in layers of grime and dust. The trucks were massive, each one a hulking machine, their steel bodies built for protection. Some of them had been abandoned for decades, but others looked as if they had been parked just yesterday. The space was silent, save for the soft hum that still echoed faintly from the far corner. "Holy crap!" Tom's voice trailed off as he stepped forward, his eyes wide with disbelief. Emily felt a chill run through her. The sight before her didn't make sense. Why were these armored trucks here? What had they been used for? She stepped closer to the nearest one, her fingers brushing against the cold metal. There was something off about the way they were arranged, too perfect, too deliberate. She glanced over at Tom. "Do you think these are connected to the old bank?" He shrugged, clearly as bewildered as she was. "I don't know. This doesn't add up. These trucks don't look like they were just abandoned. Someone put them here for a reason." A sudden, sharp noise rang out like the creaking of metal under pressure. Both Emily and Tom froze, their eyes darting around the room, but there was nothing in the shadows. The hum had stopped. They were alone, or so they thought. The momentary silence was broken by a faint sound footsteps, soft but deliberate. Someone, or something, was watching them. The footsteps grew louder, each step reverberating in the silence of the cavernous chamber. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She turned sharply, flashlight in hand, but the beam only illuminated empty space. The armored trucks loomed like silent sentinels, casting long shadows that danced eerily against the walls. "Tom," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "We're not alone." Tom froze beside her, his own flashlight sweeping the shadows. His hand hovered near the small pistol holstered at his side, though it seemed unnecessary in the quiet moment. But Emily could feel it, something was out of place. The sudden, overwhelming feeling that they weren't supposed to be here. Then, from the darkness at the far end of the chamber, a figure emerged. Slowly at first, then, with growing certainty, a tall man stepped into the dim light. His features were partially obscured by the shadows, but his stance was confident, calculated. He was wearing a dark jacket and had his hands stuffed into the pockets of his pants. His posture relaxed, almost casual. "Didn't expect anyone to find this place," the man said, his voice gravelly and thick with experience. "Least of all, a mechanic." Emily's grip tightened around the flashlight. "Who are you?" she demanded, her pulse quickening. "What is this place?" The man raised an eyebrow, his lips twitching into a half-smile. "You can call me Max. And this," he gestured to the trucks, "is something you don't want to be poking around in." Tom tensed beside her. "I think we've already started poking," he muttered under his breath, clearly unsettled. Max didn't seem bothered by their resistance. He took a few steps closer, his eyes scanning the room with a mix of familiarity and wariness. "I used to work here," he explained casually, "before the place was shut down. But I don't think you're here for the bank's history, are you?" Emily's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Max's eyes flickered toward one of the armored trucks, the one closest to them. He seemed to measure the space between them and the machine. "I know what you've found. You think it's just junk, just old vehicles someone forgot about. But that's not what's in these trucks." His voice dropped to a whisper, as if sharing a secret. "What's inside is worth far more than you can imagine." Emily glanced at Tom, then back to Max. A part of her knew he was holding back, but she wasn't sure why or how much he knew. Still, she pressed on, trying to keep her voice steady. "What's inside them? What's going on here?" Max let out a short laugh. "You really think I'm going to tell you that?" His eyes glinted with something dangerous, something Emily couldn't quite place. "You're too curious for your own good. You need to stop before you get yourself in over your head." Emily didn't like the way he spoke, as though he knew what she was thinking before she even did. He wasn't just a stranger. He was a man with a history, one that was tied to this place, to these trucks. She stepped forward, her voice firm. "Tell me what you know. I'm not leaving here until I understand what's going on." Max's expression hardened for the first time. He didn't answer right away, just stared at her with calculating eyes. Then, after a long pause, he nodded. "Fine. But I'm not the one who'll help you get what you're looking for. There's a reason these trucks are here, and there's a reason you shouldn't be digging into it." He paused for effect, his gaze moving from Emily to Tom and back again. "But if you're determined to go down this road, just remember you're not the only ones interested in what's inside." Max turned and disappeared back into the shadows, leaving Emily and Tom standing in stunned silence. Max's warning hung in the air, thick and unspoken. Emily and Tom stood in the dim light, still processing what he'd said. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant hum of machinery, which now felt louder, more ominous. "What do you think he meant?" Tom asked, his voice low. Emily shrugged, but her thoughts were racing. There was something about Max, something that made her believe he wasn't just a casual bystander. His familiarity with the place, his cryptic words, they didn't add up. "We need to know what's inside these trucks," Emily said, her resolve hardening. "We've already come this far." Tom nodded, though he didn't seem entirely convinced. "I agree, but we have to be careful. If Max's warning was serious, we might be in over our heads." Emily didn't respond right away. Her gaze was fixed on the armored trucks, the looming machines that seemed to hold so many secrets. It wasn't just the treasure they might hold. It was the history, the purpose behind their storage here. The bank had been in operation decades ago, serving clients who had long since faded into the past. But these trucks, these vehicles, had been preserved as if someone wanted them to remain hidden, locked away. She stepped forward, examining the nearest truck. The thick steel doors bore no markings, no signs of their past life. Emily knelt down and tried to pry open the door, but it wouldn't budge. She looked up at Tom, who was already studying the truck's mechanics. His brow furrowed. Old, but not that old, Tom muttered. Whoever built these trucks didn't want anyone to get inside easily. That thought gnawed at Emily's mind. What were they protecting? And why was she so desperate to uncover it? Emily couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the trucks were more than just relics of a forgotten era. She stepped back, eyeing the cold metal doors, as if they might reveal their secrets if only she looked closely enough. The air in the chamber felt thick, oppressive, as if the very walls were hiding something from her. Tom, meanwhile, had begun working on the truck beside her, pulling at bolts and checking for any sign of movement. The sound of metal scraping against metal echoed in the cavernous space. Emily wasn't sure if she was relieved to have some noise to break the silence, or if it made things even stranger. Then, just as she was about to inspect another truck, a glint of something caught her eye. Beneath the dust and rust on the floor, she spotted an odd metallic piece, a key, half buried beneath a pile of debris. She crouched down and picked it up, the cool steel warm in her hand. The key was old, its edges worn smooth, but the markings on it were clear, a symbol she didn't recognize. "What do you think this is?" Emily asked, holding the key out to Tom. He took it, turning it over in his hands. "It looks old, definitely, but I've never seen a key like this before." She couldn't help but feel that this was important. The key felt like a clue, one that would unlock the mystery of what lay within the armored trucks. But where did it belong? The symbol etched into the key seemed familiar, though Emily couldn't place it. She had the odd sensation that this wasn't the first time she'd seen it. Her mind raced, trying to remember where she had encountered it before. "There's something more to this place," Emily murmured. "And I think this key is the first piece of the puzzle." The key felt heavy in Emily's palm, like it held the answers to questions she hadn't even thought to ask. She stared at it, the strange symbol etched into its surface, sending a ripple of unease down her spine. Something about it was familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. Her mind raced as she thought back to everything she'd learned about the bank, about the tunnel, about the armored trucks. Everything seemed to be pointing towards something bigger than she could have imagined. Tom was still examining the truck, looking for any possible way to get inside. Emily turned the key over in her hand, studying the markings again. She had the sudden urge to go back to the bank's vaults, to look through the old records, to find something that might explain the key's significance. But then the thought hit her, what if the key wasn't meant for the vaults at all? What if it was meant for something hidden deeper within the tunnel? "What's going on?" Tom's voice broke through her thoughts. He was standing beside the truck now, his hands on his hips, clearly frustrated. "I don't know," Emily said, shaking her head. "But I found something." She held up the key. "This symbol, have you ever seen it before?" Tom leaned in to inspect it, frowning. "No, it's not familiar. But I don't think we have time to figure that out right now. The real question is, what do we do next?" Emily glanced at the armored trucks, the question hanging in the air. There were still so many unknowns, so many secrets lurking beneath the surface. She couldn't help but feel that they were standing on the edge of something dangerous, something that had been hidden for a long time. She thought about Max's warning, about his cryptic words. "You're not the only ones interested in what's inside," the thought echoed in her mind. "Maybe we need to find out where this key fits," Emily said finally, her voice steady. "But we can't do it alone. We need help." Tom shot her a skeptical look. "Help? From who?" "There's someone who might know about this," Emily said, her mind already working on a plan. "Max. He said he used to work here. Maybe he knows more about what's going on. Maybe he's the key to getting us closer to the truth." Tom didn't look convinced, but he nodded slowly. "I still don't trust him." Emily understood his hesitation. Max was an enigma, a man who seemed to know too much and yet shared too little. But at this point, they had no other options. If they wanted to uncover the truth, they needed to find out what Max knew. And if that meant putting themselves in more danger, then so be it. "We'll need to be careful," Emily said. "We don't know who else might be watching. But I think Max is the only way forward." Tom crossed his arms, still unsure. "You really think he's going to help us?" Emily didn't answer right away. She didn't know for sure, but she had a gut feeling that Max knew far more than he was letting on, and she was going to find out what that was, no matter the cost. With a determined nod, Emily stood up, slipping the key into her pocket. Let's go find him. The drive to meet Max felt longer than it should have, the weight of the key in Emily's pocket pressing against her side, like a constant reminder of the dangers they were about to face. The streets outside her truck were empty, save for the occasional flicker of a street lamp as they passed. Tom sat beside her, his hands resting tensely on his knees, the silence between them growing heavier with each passing minute. Emily's mind raced. What if Max wasn't the ally they needed? What if he was playing a game with them, drawing them deeper into a trap? The thought gnawed at her, but there was no turning back now. She had to know more about the tunnel, about the armored trucks, and about the key that had set all this in motion. Tom's voice broke through her thoughts. Do you really trust him? Emily glanced over at him, her grip tightening on the wheel. I don't know if I trust him, but right now he's the only lead we've got, and if anyone can help us get to the bottom of this, it's him. Tom didn't respond, but his furrowed brows said everything. He wasn't convinced. Neither was Emily, but she wasn't about to give up now. They arrived at a small, dilapidated building on the edge of town, Max's place, or at least where he was hiding. The dimly lit exterior looked like something out of a movie, with peeling paint and broken windows. Emily parked the truck, and they both stepped out, the chill of the evening air biting at their skin. Max was waiting for them, standing in the doorway with his arms crossed. He didn't seem surprised to see them. In fact, it almost looked like he had been expecting them. I knew you'd come, he said, his voice low and steady. But I didn't think it'd be so soon. Emily didn't waste time. We need answers, Max. What's really going on here? What's inside those trucks? Max studied her for a long moment before shrugging. You're asking the wrong questions. It's not about what's inside the trucks. It's about who's after them. Emily narrowed her eyes. What do you mean? Max stepped back, motioning for them to follow him inside. Come on in. I'll explain everything. But once you know, there's no going back. You're already in too deep. Emily exchanged a glance with Tom before following Max into the building. The inside was sparse. The only furniture a worn couch and a few tables cluttered with papers and old files. It smelled like dust and mildew, but there was something else, too. Something that felt like secrets buried in the air. Max sat down on the couch, motioning for them to take a seat. He paused for a moment, his eyes flickering toward the window before meeting Emily's gaze. There's a reason those armored trucks are hidden away in that tunnel, Max began, his tone serious. They were part of a covert operation, a plan that went south during the Cold War. The syndicate used the bank as a front for laundering money, but they were also transporting something far more dangerous. And now, there are people who will do anything to get their hands on it. Emily's heart raced. What are they after? What's in the trucks? Max's eyes darkened. Gold. But not just any gold. This is Nazi-era gold stolen during World War II, hidden away to keep it from the Allies. And those who know about it would kill to get their hands on it. A chill ran through Emily's spine. She had thought the armored trucks were just relics, but now they were part of something much bigger, far more dangerous than she had imagined. You need to leave this alone, Max continued, his voice barely above a whisper. There are people who will stop at nothing to protect this secret. People who will kill anyone who gets in their way. And now, you've found it. The air inside Max's place felt suffocating as his words settled like a heavy weight in the room. Nazi-era gold. Stolen treasure, hidden away to avoid the watchful eyes of history. Emily's mind reeled as she processed the enormity of what Max had just told them. The armored trucks they had discovered weren't just abandoned relics of a past era. They were vaults, holding the kind of wealth that could change everything. Max's voice cut through the silence. You're playing a dangerous game, Emily. You think you've uncovered a treasure, but what you've found is a curse. This is bigger than you think. The people who want that gold are ruthless. They'll do whatever it takes to keep it hidden, and they'll kill anyone who gets too close. Emily's pulse quickened. She wasn't one to back down from a challenge, especially one this big, but she couldn't ignore the gravity of what Max was saying. She had stumbled onto something far beyond her understanding. The gold, the armored trucks, the tunnel. It was all tied to a dark history that had remained buried for decades. Tom shifted uncomfortably beside her, his eyes darting between Max and Emily. "So what are we supposed to do now?" he asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. "Let it all go? Walk away? And pretend we never found it?" Max leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I didn't say that, but you need to understand what you're up against. If you want to go after this gold, you'd better be ready for war." Emily's heart raced, but her resolve only grew stronger. She wasn't going to walk away. She had found something that could change her life, and she wasn't going to let fear stop her now. "What do we need to do?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions churning inside her. Max studied her for a long moment, as if weighing her sincerity. Finally, he nodded. "You'll need to get inside the trucks, but to do that, you'll need a way in something no one else has." Emily thought back to the key, still tucked safely in her pocket. "I think I have what we need," she said, pulling the key out and showing it to Max. His eyes narrowed as he examined it. "This is it," Max muttered, his fingers brushing over the symbol, etched into the metal. "It's a master key, one of a kind. It'll unlock the trucks, but using it means you're tied to this for good. Once you open those doors, there's no going back." Emily's stomach tightened at his words. She knew he was right. Once they uncovered what was hidden inside those trucks, there would be no turning back. The gold, the secrets, it would all come out. And with it, the danger that had followed them this far. "We don't have a choice," Emily said quietly, her voice resolute. "We're going in." Max nodded, but his expression was grim. "You've made your choice. Just know this. The moment you step foot in that tunnel, you're on your own. No one's coming to save you." Emily stood up, her mind made up. "Then let's make sure we save ourselves." As they left Max's place, the weight of their decision pressed heavily on her chest. They were about to open the doors to a world far more dangerous than they could have imagined, but Emily couldn't back down. She wasn't about to let fear dictate her actions. The gold was within reach, and no matter what it took, she was going to find it. Emily's nerves were on edge as she and Tom made their way back to the tunnel. The decision had been made. There was no turning back now. The master key was in her hand, cold and unyielding, its weight a constant reminder of the risks they were about to face. As they approached the entrance, the familiar hum of the tunnel greeted them once again. But this time, it felt different, darker, heavier, as if the place itself was holding its breath. "Are you sure about this?" Tom asked quietly, his voice tight with unease. He kept glancing around, as if expecting someone to jump out of the shadows. Emily gave him a sidelong glance, the key clutched in her palm. "We don't have a choice. The moment Max showed us the way, we knew what had to happen." Tom was silent for a moment, then sighed, shaking his head. "This feels wrong, like we're digging up something that was meant to stay buried." Emily didn't argue. She had the same feeling deep in her gut, but she wasn't about to let fear stop her. They had come this far, and the gold in those trucks was the key to everything: answers, power, and a future that she could finally control. They reached the tunnel entrance, the massive steel doors looming before them. Emily stepped forward, the key cold against her fingers. The symbol on it seemed to pulse, as if it knew the moment had finally arrived. She slid the key into the lock, the metal groaning in protest as it turned. There was a click, and the door creaked open. The chamber inside was as eerie as ever, the armored trucks standing like silent sentinels. The place still smelled of rust and decay, but now there was something else, something that made Emily's heart race. She wasn't alone. As they moved deeper into the room, the sound of footsteps echoed from the far side. Emily froze, her body tensing. She looked at Tom, her eyes wide with warning. Someone was coming. From the shadows, a group of men emerged, dark suits, stern faces, and eyes that gleamed with dangerous intent. Emily recognized them instantly. They were part of the syndicate, The people Max had warned them about. The ones who would kill to protect what was in those trucks. The leader of the group, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he spotted Emily and Tom. "I was wondering when you two would show up," he said coldly. "Did you really think you could find this place and walk away with it?" Tom reached for his gun, but Emily put a hand on his arm, shaking her head. The last thing they needed was a firefight in a place like this. "You're too late," the man continued, his voice low and menacing. "The gold was never meant for you. It's been hidden for a reason." Emily's pulse raced. "We're not leaving without it," the man smirked, his hand resting on the gun at his side. "I'm afraid you don't have much of a choice." Without warning, he signaled to his men, and they advanced, the tension thick in the air. Emily's mind raced, her eyes darting to the trucks. She had to act fast, there was no time to waste. With a quick glance at Tom, she whispered, "We're taking this fight to them." In one swift movement, Emily reached for the master key, holding it up high, as if to challenge the men standing in front of her. The room fell silent for a moment as they all watched the key, knowing what it represented. This was no longer just about gold. It was about survival. And Emily was determined to walk away with both. The standoff in the dark chamber seemed to stretch on forever. Emily's pulse pounded in her ears as she stood facing the syndicate, the master key still gripped tightly in her hand. The men circled them, their footsteps muffled by the thick concrete floor. There was no easy way out. Emily knew the stakes now. This wasn't just about the gold, it was about their lives. She had to think fast, or everything they had worked for would be lost. "Put the key down, and we'll make this quick," the scarred man said, his voice cold and unwavering. "You don't want to make this harder than it has to be." But Emily wasn't going to back down. She had come too far, and there was no way she would let them take everything she had discovered. Her eyes flicked to Tom, whose hand hovered over his gun, ready to act at the slightest move. "Not a chance," Emily said, her voice steady, though her heart was racing. "You're not walking away with this." The scarred man chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "You don't get to make the rules here. We do." Suddenly, one of his men lunged toward Emily, and without thinking, she dropped to the ground, narrowly avoiding the grab. Her instincts kicked in, and she spun around, pushing herself up to her feet. But just as quickly, another man advanced on her from the other side. It was happening too fast. Then, a gunshot rang out, sharp and deafening in the confined space. For a split second, Emily froze, heart in her throat. But when she looked up, she saw the man who had been approaching her stumble back, clutching his arm. Tom had fired, his aim true. Chaos erupted. The syndicate men scrambled, shouting commands, pulling out weapons. But Emily and Tom had the element of surprise on their side. "Go!" Emily shouted, rushing toward the closest armored truck. She reached for the door, fumbling with the key, her hands slick with sweat. The truck was the key, the treasure, the answers everything they had been fighting for. The key slid into the lock with a click, and the door swung open, revealing a treasure beyond imagination. Stacks of gold bars, wrapped in aging linen, gleamed in the dim light. But it wasn't just gold. It was the weight of history, stolen and hidden, now exposed. Emily's breath caught in her throat. This was it. The door slammed open behind her, and she spun around just as the leader of the syndicate lunged at her, his face contorted with rage. But before he could reach her, a sudden explosion of light and sound echoed through the chamber, sending him flying backward. Max. From the entrance, Max emerged, his gun raised, smoke curling from the barrel. The remaining men froze, confusion and fear in their eyes. "You didn't think I'd leave you two to clean up my mess, did you?" Max's voice was cold, a grim smile on his lips. "You're welcome." With the syndicate temporarily incapacitated, Emily and Tom didn't hesitate. They grabbed what they could, gold, documents, whatever they could carry, knowing they didn't have much time. There was no telling how long they had before backup arrived. As they bolted toward the exit, Emily's mind raced. What would she do with the gold? The riches? The power it could give her? She didn't have all the answers. But she knew one thing: this was only the beginning. They emerged from the tunnel into the cool night air, breathless, hearts pounding, and adrenaline still coursing through their veins. The world felt different now. There were new roads ahead, new possibilities. But as they looked back at the tunnel, with the syndicate in ruins, they knew one thing for sure. They were no longer the people who had started this journey. They had been changed, forged by fire. And whatever came next, they would face it together.